I'm shooting in 4K and 24 frames per second on the Sony ZV-1, and if I want to follow the 180-degree shutter rule, I'm going to keep my shutter at about 1/50, which it is right now, and also take my aperture as low as it can go so I can have a nice blurry background. The problem is I'm very overexposed, so I'm going to turn the internal ND filter on the ZV-1. Even after turning the internal ND filter on, I'm still pretty overexposed, so I have three options. I can either crank up the shutter speed, crank up the aperture, or add a variable ND filter, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about in this video. Normally the cost of admission is 1 like and 1 subscribe, but today we're offering a 50% discount where all you have to do is like the video, but act fast because it's a limited time offer. The Sony ZV-1 is such a great little camera, and one of the comments that I constantly get underneath my videos is how everybody loves the internal ND filter. In fact, a lot of people aren't going to upgrade to the new E10 because that one doesn't have an internal ND filter like the ZV-1. Now, even though the internal ND filter is good on this, it's not great. Sometimes it's just not enough to get your picture exactly how you want it to be exposed for. So that's when I started to test and investigate, and I was able to come up with this little variable ND filter that you could put on the end of the ZV-1 for under 50 bucks. Now, before I show you how to set this up, exposure can be a pretty daunting subject matter, and I've actually made a 25-minute comprehensive video on shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, and I will leave that in the description so you guys can take a look at it if you're feeling a little bit lost when it comes to exposure. For the rest of you, let's proceed. So by now, a lot of you guys have already picked up the Ulanzi wide-angle lens, and that comes with a filter adapter ring that you attach to the end of the ZV-1, which comes out to be 52 millimeters. Don't worry, if you didn't pick up that Ulanzi wide-angle lens yet, they sell the filter adapter ring separately on Amazon for $8.88 as of the time this video was recorded. The filter adapter ring has a 52 millimeter thread on the end of it, which you hook up the Ulanzi wide-angle lens to, or a variable ND filter that has a 52 millimeter thread on the end of it. You can pick up one of these Gobe variable ND filters on Amazon. So I never was really good at math, but if you were to add the filter adapter ring to the Gobe variable ND filter, you're looking at about $42 to get a variable ND setup for your ZV-1. Now that we talked about how to achieve this setup, we're going to talk about why you might need a variable ND filter for your ZV-1. Now, even though we talked about this in the beginning of the video, we're going to take a little bit deeper of a dive of why you need a variable ND filter. Now, if we were trying to stay true to the 180-degree shutter rule, which states that you have to have your shutter speed double your frame rate, then you'll find yourself in a bad position when you're outside during the day, that your camera is just overexposed. So a quick fix a lot of people do is to just crank up their shutter speed, which darkens the image, but in turn creates an unrealistic look in their image. I've done this before where I've actually cranked the shutter speed way up, and then when I get home and I put the SD card into my computer, I see jittery footage and I see unrealistic looking footage. So I learned my lesson the hard way and I had to bring my shutter speed back down to the double the frame rate number. But that was just making my video overexposed again. Another solution you could do is you could just crank up your aperture as high as it can go. That will also darken your image, but the problem with that is you lose that nice blurry background that you get with a lower aperture. A lot of times in video and in photography, a nice blurry background is desirable because it gives you separation between your subject and the background. So if you're fighting against the exposure and you turn your aperture up, you lose that nice blurry background. In both cases, when you turn the shutter speed up or the aperture up, you're compromising the look of your image, and it's always best not to compromise and to get the proper tools that you need in order to leave your camera in its optimal settings. In my case, when we were shooting in 4K 24, I like to have my shutter speed at 1/50 and my aperture as low as it can go. In this case, it was f1.8. As you saw, the video was way overexposed, and that's when we introduced sunglasses or a variable ND filter. One of the reasons why I like a variable ND filter is because you can adjust it on the go, but one of the problems that come with variable ND filters is you get some vignetting in the upper corners of your image, so just be careful of that. Now that I have this set up, I no longer have to worry about cranking up my shutter speed or my aperture in order to get my image exposed properly, and I don't have to worry about any weird artifacts or any unwanted effects in my image, and now my video is not compromised. So if you guys decide you want to pick one of these up so you don't compromise your image, I'll leave links in the description and you can go out there and just do your research and figure out what's best for you. You might already have an ND filter inside your camera bag, and all you need is the proper step-up rings in order to make it work on the end of your 52 millimeter filter adapter ring. I'm Joe with Film Alliance, and until the next video, peace.